In this video, we're going to take a look at how to retrieve conversations inside of CometChat and the JavaScript SDK. This will include how to get recent conversations for users or groups and how to tag those conversations and pull out certain conversations based on those tags as well. Let's get started. We'll start on the CometChat website, where we'll head to developers and documentation. In this section, we want to head over to SDKs and then select the JavaScript Web SDK. On the left-hand menu, select the messages and expand it out, and then select Retrieve Conversations. Traditionally, in CometChat, you can have conversations, and retrieving conversations allows you to get the last lot of messages for both one-on-one conversations as well as group conversations for users that are logged in. This essentially helps you build your recent chat list. We'll be taking a look at different ways that we can retrieve conversations, such as setting limits, as well as conversation types, as well as creating groups and tags in general. Let's start off with having a look at how to retrieve a list of conversations. If you watch the previous video where we take a look at message and message filtering, the structure for conversations are very similar. To break it down, what ends up happening is that we have a conversation request class. This pulls all the conversations that we need, but in order to use this class, we need to structure a request. So we use the conversation request builder class. This builds the structure that we use inside of the conversation request class, which can then pull out any type of message that we need. Let's take a look at a working example of this. I'm going to open up VS Code with the project that we've been working on the last few videos, which you can also find in the description below. I'm going to retrieve a list of conversations, and to do this, I'm going to pass in two variables. The first variable will be limit, and I'll set this to 30, which we'll use shortly. The next variable will be the let conversation request. Now, this conversation request will equal new space CometChat.conversations request builder. And here we'll set the limit to be the variable of limit of 30, and we'll build this request. We can now use it. Let's give this a use by doing a fetch next on it. We'll do conversations request dot fetch next. Then we'll pull out the conversations that come from that request. We'll pass this value into a function and we'll console log it out. So here I'll just console log out conversations and then pass in the variable of conversations. And now I want to test what this will actually look like by opening this up on a Chrome browser. I've got a live server running here where I can view this file. So let's do this now. Let's open it up and have a look at what we see inside of the console. Here we can see that conversations have popped up. I have three main ones here. I have a group conversation, a one with Superhero 1, as well as one with myself. Now, let's see if we can set the conversation type for conversations. We can do this by setting a new variable called conversation type. I'm going to set the type to be group as a string here, and we're going to add this to the conversation request builder. We'll use set conversation type here, and then we'll pass in the variable of conversation type, which we set to group earlier. That is pretty much it. And now we should only see group conversations. Let's open up Chrome here and test this out. And I only had one previously, and if we open this up, this was the test group, which is now showing up. Great. We can also do the same for users. So let's set the conversation type here to user and have a look, and we can see I've got my two conversations of Superhero 1 as well as Adrian as the two conversations. Before we go further, let's have a look at what's inside a conversation object. This is useful to know if you're going to display it out in a user interface. The first one is the conversation ID. This is useful because it is a combination of the content that you're talking about. So for example, here we've got the ID of the first user, the ID of the second user, and the type of request it is here. This would apply the same here where I'm talking to myself. So here it's between Adrian and Adrian with the type being user. This should make it easier when you're structuring requests. You also have the conversation type here as user and user. If I were to remove the conversation type here that we previously set, we would see that now we should have a combination of the two. And for the conversation type here for the group, we just have group. The other aspect for the conversation ID for groups is that you just have the group underscore and the group ID itself. This is much easier to use. As part of this, we get one primary last message here, which is the last message inside of that conversation. This is useful to display inside of a UI, especially if you want to show a preview of what's happening in that conversation. And here you also have this metric here for conversation with, which gives you some more stats about the actual conversation itself, such as how many members there are, how many are currently online, and whatnot. Okay, now let's see if we can do some filtering for conversations. We're going to start off with something simple. We're going to check for users or groups that currently have tags. This will pull out conversations specifically with those kinds of people or groups that are using tags inside of them. We created some tags earlier for users and groups called tag1, and we're going to try and filter for these. To do specific filtering for a certain user that has a certain tag, this is where we use the set user tags, passing in the variable of user tags. I can check this in the Chrome tools in the console, but right now I don't have any specific user tags, so this comes out as empty. Alternatively, we can do the same for groups, where we can search for a specific group that has a specific tag by using the set group tags, passing in the variable group tags. Again, we could check this in console, but I don't have any group tags on conversations, so this will come up as empty as well. Taking a step back, instead of searching for users with tags or groups with tags, we can search for conversations with tags. This is where we can pass in with tags equals true. This is specific for conversations, finding if a certain conversation has a tag. Of course, we can have a more specific version of this by using set tags, and this will look for conversations that have a specific tag such as tag1. Since I haven't been that specific for my previous conversations, this comes up currently as empty. Let's see if we can fix this by creating a tag as part of our conversation. I'm going to update the variable here to tags, and I'm going to call CometChat.tag conversation, and this will tag a specific conversation for a user. I'm going to tag a conversation here for superuser1, and I'm going to set this as a user tag for user conversations with the tags I've applied here with just tag1. Then I'm going to create a function that will console log out the conversations which I've just tagged now, and I'll console log this out over here as tagged conversations, and we'll check the value here for the conversations as well. Now with this, we should be able to console log this out. Now I see that here I've actually misset the user ID here. Instead of superuser1, it should be superhero1. So make sure you're very specific with the users you're tagging. Now I test this with tagging my own conversation for Adrian, user Adrian. And here that does work. And then I update this to superhero1, which was the conversation we previously had as well. With those two conversations now tagged, we can actually have a look at the tags in the console, which are just over here. We can now retrieve these tags when we're retrieving conversations as well. So let's test this. I'm going to comment out our tag conversation script here, and I'm going to re-enable the previous one here where we're using the request builder. I'm going to update here this to set tags, and I'm going to search through the tags we just set, and this works successfully. We have our two conversations here with superhero1 as well as Adrian both working and showing up. Now, sometimes when we're doing real-time messaging and sending and receiving messages, we need to convert those message objects into conversation objects. This can be done with the CometChat helper, which has a special method called getConversationFromMessage, where you can pass a message value in and get a conversation value out. Let's take a look at how we can create this. So what we'll do is call CometChat.CometChatHelper. And here we're going to get the conversation from message method, and we're going to pass in a message in a second there, but for now we'll just set this as a message variable. Then we're going to pull out the conversation that would happen from that conversation of the message. We'll console log this out simply as a conversation. Now, since this command here requires a message to be passed in, we can actually copy this and paste it into a code example below, where we're pulling out a message that we can now convert into a conversation. We can test this out in our Chrome debugging tools here, where we're having a message sent. This is the message that was sent, and here a conversation is created with the group and the test group that I've done when I sent that message. Perfect. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you want more information, check out the documentation below. Otherwise, if you're looking for the next video where we look at threaded messages, check that out up here. Thank you.